Welcome to the Dharma Project with Stephanie Weeks.
Thank you all so much for joining me. I am so happy to see you all as always. Today I have a very special guest, Dianne Porchia, and I have gotten to know her a little bit because we actually work together. I found her on the Heal documentary, and the work that she is doing and the project she's working on, they're nothing short of incredible. So I cannot wait to introduce you to her and all the wonderful things that she's doing. So welcome.
You for that lovely introduction.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, it's good
Absolutely.
to see you again, Stephanie.
Thank you. You as well. And like I said, your voice is just so calming. Like even if someone works with you, even just your voice, it just like, I don't know if you've worked on that or not, but it just really, even that just like brings you a peace, almost like a meditation or like saying Om, you're chanting Om or mantras or things like that. So that even that in itself is a wonderful gift.
Oh, thank you. I get that feedback, so that's great to hear. Thank you.
Good, good, good. Well, so like I mentioned, you do a lot of different things and they all very much interest me. And I had to write it down because some of the words I can't even say. But so as I mentioned, I found you on the Heal documentary, which I really, really strongly advise anyone anywhere to watch. It's on Amazon Prime. It is so wonderful. Um, and you handle or you work with or you use principles of and practice mind body medicine, psychoneuroimmunology, epigenetics, heart brain coherence, somatic dialogue, sacred anger work, which you have trademark, which is awesome, heart soul center communication skills. And basically, what you do is you're a holistic stress reduction expert, which Lord, do we need you in this lifetime with all the stress going around. What I wanted to do was kind of touch a little bit on each thing to help
Mm.
educate people on what they are and what's out there. There's so many more things out there than what most of us know about. How do you feel
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah. So I'm going to back up and give a little bit of background because
Okay,
when I
good.
first started out in this field, it was like 22 years ago, and so I graduated with my master's in spiritual psychology 22 years ago, something like that.
Wow.
And I didn't really know what I was getting into. Back then, you talked about spiritual perspectives, and it all seemed very woo-woo. And I was taking this very seriously, and I went to a conference, a 3-day conference back in 2000. And that was such a mind opener for me. It was called Reinventing Medicine, after the name of a book by the same name by Larry Dossey, Reinventing Medicine. And the book was about the power of prayer and distant healing. And at this conference, that was the first time that I met Bruce Lipton and learned about the biology of belief. And his presentation was so impactful. And I just came away from those 3 days, with his presentation and the others that I met, so just on, elevated so high and just thinking, wow, this is cutting edge medicine and I'm going to be a part of this. So, I was just starting out with my education then, and I was so excited and so inspired by the people that I met. And so you asked about some of the terms. So psychoneuroimmunology is like it's the scientific name or the field research name for mind-body medicine, basically, right? So psycho having to do with the mind, neuro having to do with they're actually neurological responses in the body, and and what happens when we get triggered, either in that protection mode or the growth mode, and that's Bruce Lipton describes all of that so beautifully in Biology of Belief, right? How the human cell can move when it gets triggered. It can be in the protection mode, which is triggering that freeze, fight, or flight mode, right? And that also, when we're triggered, it secretes the stress hormones, so the cortisol and the adrenaline, in preparation to save ourselves from some sort of danger. So it's let me turn my phone off. Anyway, cortisol is not all bad. So, people say, oh, I don't want to have any stress in my life. But actually, cortisol is immune supporting and boosting when it's, shows up at right and appropriate times, and then also goes back to balance and homeostasis after the triggering event is over. Right. So the example that I give, in my own life was when I would mountain bike. I would go find a place, in the top of the mountain somewhere to do my prayers and meditation. And one day I'm on the mountain and I'm sitting on the ground in a cross-legged position. And, and when I was done with my meditation, I raised my arms and to stretch. And as soon as I moved my arms, I heard a right next to me. And immediately my limbic brain, right, which is hardwired into our nervous system, identified that as a rattlesnake and a threat. And before I had time to even think about anything, I had leapt up from a cross-seated position on the ground to a standing position away from the source of the noise. I never saw the snake, right? But clearly that's what it was. And so I looked around and didn't see him. And so I got my bike and I continued on my ride. Had I continued to relive that encounter over and over again in my mind, I would have been able to keep my stress hormones elevated, right, for a longer period of time. And that's kind of what happens with that mental and emotional stress that we're holding inside our body. It's like we ruminate over things in the past, whether it's trauma, upsets, whatever. And it's like that steady, slow drip of the cortisols that are slowly chipping away at the immune system and making the body more susceptible to illness, diseases, and even cancers, right? So the opposite is also true. When we have a positive experience, and when we're holding positive emotions in our body, our joy, our love, our gratitude, that also triggers a chemical response in the body, and that's the release of endorphins and feel-good hormones, right? And that has a secondary effect of stimulating the production of T cells. And it's the T cells and helper cells that help keep cancer cells in check and in balance so that they don't proliferate. So we all have, cancer cells in our body, or cells that can have the potential to turn into a problem, but it's our beautifully functioning and beautifully designed immune system that keeps that all in check and in balance, right? Those positive emotions also stimulate the production of immunoglobulin A, or IgA for short, which is the immune system's primary defense against bacteria and viruses, right? So going back to the word psychoneuroimmunology, it's, the combination of the mind and then the physiological body response, the chemical response in the body to the environment that's either a danger or not. It's something that's safety. And then immunology, how that affects the immune system, right? So that's what psychoneuroimmunology is. And Bruce Lipton, with his presentation, Biology of Belief, illustrates that so beautifully.
It does. And God, you've said so many amazing things. Like I can't even. So I love Bruce. I've followed his work for so many years. Biology of Belief is one of my absolute favorite books. He's really incredible the way that he explains things, and it can just like make sense. It's still scientific, right? But like he can make sense of it. It's not like things that just go above your head. And I think that's really incredible. I really hope to have him on this podcast one day. And so that's awesome that your introduction, was through that. And I didn't know that you used to mountain bike ride. I actually did as well. I used to race off road years ago. I did the same. It was just off road and up, mountains and hills and things like that.
Yeah, that's great.
And so that was a lot of fun. But something else you said was really interesting as well. So when I was diagnosed with cancer, probably 100 people said, "Oh my God, you're the healthiest person I know. We are all screwed." And I said, that's not our lesson here. Our lesson is that you can do every single thing right. And if you don't control your stress and the stress hormones, then it's like the concrete that gets a little bitty crack where the weed comes through and it just sneaks in. So that's more of the lesson than, oh, you're healthy, so we should all give up type of thing. And then you brought up cortisol, which is also crazy too, because living in that high stress for about 20 years with a really, really 24-hour a day, super high stress career, I believe 100% was part of the perfect storm that caused me to get that diagnosis versus my immune system being able to keep it down. Because as you mentioned, we all have cancer cells in our body at any time. And then it's just a matter of like, can we shoo it away or not? And I mean, I just think like the universe just cracks me up sometimes as I'm like, what in the world, like, is this humor about? Because since my treatments, which I did probably 15 different modalities to help cure my cancer, and including was chemo and radiation because of the type of rare and aggressive that I had. And because of the treatments that saved my life, my body no longer produces cortisol. How nuts
How's
is
that
that?
possible?
How nuts
How
is
is that
that?
possible?
Well, so my pituitary still works, right? And my adrenals supposedly still work. I don't have Addison's disease. I just have immunoinsufficiency. So there's something going on with the discussion between the pituitary and the adrenals for the production of the cortisol. So I actually had to almost die 6 times for people to finally realize what was going on was adrenal crisis, which is actually rare. And I'm like, how funny is this? Okay, so I live in this high cortisol for 20 years, trying to do the right thing for everybody and this high stress, whatever, go through all this. And now I can't even get any back. Like, come on, what the hell, But the endocrinologist, believes that I will never be able to produce it. And I am not willing to accept that. I've just had so many other things going on that I haven't had time to delve and dive into that. That's how I am. Like a lot of things I want bullet points. I don't need details. When it comes to health, nutrition, holistic healing, modalities for healing, cancer cures, cancer, causes, like all these things, I am all in, right? And so now I'm working on the hormone research because I had to have a hysterectomy and all these crazy things. But I'm going to come around to researching and trying to figure out how to heal the adrenals. And one thing that came up just the other day was sound healing, which actually Jeffrey Thompson, he was also on Heal. And I had planned to work with him as one of my modalities, but I couldn't get to California. And just the other day, I was watching something and it was talking about sound healing and, adrenals popped up. I'm like, got the message, noted, But so long story short, there are so many things like you're saying that go into cancer and what's there and what to trigger it. And, we'll go next into epigenetics. I think it's a perfect segue because I don't think people give enough weight to the amount of stress, chronic stress that we are all under. And I loved your analogy. Well, it wasn't even an analogy. It was real life with the snake that you just, because we're programmed to run from the lion or the tiger, that there's not even time for process because our brain, which is such a miracle, can just and connect with everything and process so quickly that you were able to just like, you just go and then you're like, okay, that happened. And that's the same thing with the chronic stress and not realize that there's a mind body connection and all the new science that shows that our heart actually has neurons in it. And that was never thought of before, realized before. And going back to the diagnosis and people saying before and even after, well, it's in my genes, I'm going to get it, or it's in your genes, you're going to get it. I'm like, that is not the truth. It is wrong science information that most of us have. which leads us into epigenetics because it's like, and I
Yeah.
want you to talk more about that than me, of course. But I
Hmm.
want to get out there that that's not the freaking self-fulfilling prophecy. Like, even though, yes, I did have the BRCA2 mutation, which is actually a mutation in the repair DNA. So my DNA that basically is programmed to repair issues, right, in the cells and everything happening. That's what has the mutation. Great one to have. But
Hmm.
even if you have that, it does not mean that you're going to get the cancers that are on the high risk list because of many reasons, and epigenetics being one of them. So that's one of your modalities, and I
Right.
would love to kind of dive into that.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite subjects, by the way.
Yeah. Thanks. Can you remind me again, Stephanie, what was your diagnosis?
I was aggressive, invasive, triple negative breast cancer, stage 3, grade 3B, and had gone into multiple, like almost maybe 7 or 8 lymph nodes. It was like all the
Huh.
things.
Okay. Wow.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So epigenetics is not a modality. It's a field of study, again, like
Science. Yeah.
psychoneuroimmunology. And actually, it's a phenomenon, I guess, more. And it's, again, what Bruce Lipton describes, excuse me, in biology of belief. And it's the blueprint that we're born into, the DNA blueprint, is not necessarily what is going to play out in one's life and health wise. Because what he found through, as a cellular biologist, Bruce studied how the human cell responds, right? And he found that it responds to its environment. Now that can be the real physical environment that can be a stress-provoking environment. It can also be the perceived environment. So, what we're holding in our thoughts and our beliefs, right? So, the human mind cannot tell the difference between reality and something that is imagined or visualized, right? Which is, a good thing because if there was trauma in someone's history that needs to be healed, that has been stuck inside the psyche, that can be healed because we can create new neural pathways and create a new story, right? Um, so I always say that it's important not to do the spiritual bypass because people, they hear this and they think, oh, it's all in the mind and I just have to think positive. That isn't necessarily true because if there is a wounded inner child that resides in the adult, it's residing in the subconscious that's been terribly traumatized or wounded or hurt or whatever, and that's being carried with them into adult life, or if there's a really loud inner saboteur voice that resides in the subconscious mind that believes I'm not good enough, not worthy, not, lovable. All of those things are creating suppressed mental and emotional stress, right? So, let me see. I'm going to back up. When someone comes to me and they say they've been diagnosed with cancer, some sort of cancer, the first thing I say is, so reframe your diagnosis, not as a sickness or an illness or something that's going to kill you, but reframe it as an imbalance in your body that resulted from an accumulation of toxic stress over time. And that toxic stress can be, environmental from the toxins that are around us through chemicals. That's why it's important to be mindful of the foods that you're eating, the water that you're drinking, the chemicals that are in your house, chemicals that you put in your body through pharmaceuticals. Those are chemicals. Those are altering your neuroreceptors. They're alternating your everything in your body, and they have really harmful side effects. And when you're combining multiple pharmaceuticals, they don't even have a clue as to how they all interact with each other. And unfortunately, I think the United States consumes, I forget what percentage it is. It's a very high percentage of all the pharmaceuticals that are produced in the world.
And we're one of the only countries where it can be a commercial on TV where you can go say, hey, doc, I want this. Like, don't even get me started.
It's crazy. It's crazy. So if there's 4 side effects over here and 6 side effects over there with, that doesn't add up to 10 side effects. It actually, excuse me, it multiplies before that exponentially. To take a sip of something.
Oh, sure. And I want to say while you're doing that, for you to say that could make me just cry because it's what's so missing, right? And so like so many people, they say, I won't even say it out loud. But I would never say that. I caught myself once, I corrected it immediately. I would say, I have this diagnosis. I would never own that in my body. I would never say that. I would never use that. Like it wasn't something. It was, like you said, it was an imbalance that I needed to figure out. And I also think it's not crazy because it's just how it works, right? And evolution and just everything. But that I've always felt in my heart, because I found so much joy in seeing people heal. No, it doesn't matter how simple it is, right? To the biggest things. And it the reaction my body has is just, I can't even exactly describe it. And so I've always known like there's something I'm supposed to do here. Right. And I never really was an advocate of chemo and radiation, just as one example. I still don't think it's needed in every instance. And I even helped my mom through it, and she chose not to do that with everything that I worked with her through and the things I had studied and all that for fun, because it was interesting. But the fact that many women do it, and the fact that, and I'll give a quick little story, my mom's oncologist from over 10 years before I had a diagnosis. I mean, I looked him in the eye and I'm like, you would give this to your children. You would take this. That's what, I mean, I wasn't mean, but I was just like direct in my questioning. And so my mom decided not to do it. Well, when my mom's telling him later, that, oh, she's got it, she's doing chemo. He's like, oh, wait, I'm sorry, what? And she goes, well, she's triple negative. And he's like, well, she'll just die if she doesn't, because it's a very, rare and different kind that actually has the best response to chemo, which is the little blessing in disguise. My point is being that, without me having walked in those very difficult shoes of chemo and radiation, I think that sometimes, for people like us who are trying to spread things like we're talking about today, and you say, well, you've had a diagnosis, whatever. And you say, well, I didn't do this or the other. Whether it's acceptable or not, there's a certain percentage of dismissal, right, of your information and your knowledge when you weren't in those shoes or didn't walk particularly in those shoes. So I feel like, it's part of how everything happens for a reason. Part of my story and my mission in life is that I had to walk in those shoes to learn from my own self and be able to teach moving forward that, you don't have to say I'm only holistic or I'm only integrative or I'm only going to do, this science or that science or this modality or that. Like you can actually meet them when the need is there, and you can find the best way to complement them, when the need is there. And so just for you to even say, it's just awesome, to say like, don't come in there and say like, okay, I have this and, this is my thing. And, I'm going to die from this, or, the people all these triple negative breast cancer groups that just even this morning, like, I'm not going to get emotional, but it's like, does it always come back? Am I definitely going to die? Does anybody survive this? When you get that diagnosis, that's the questions these women are asking in these groups. And I want to scream from the rooftops. No, everybody does not die, and you don't have to die, and it doesn't have to come back. But it's just such a, like I said, rare and aggressive and all these things. And so it's just, sharing this information and getting this out and saying, look, it's a disconnect. There's something disconnected or out of balance between your mind, your body, and your spirit. And you've got to figure out what it is, and you've got to, work toward getting back in that harmony. And so it's just, I know that was kind of a long tangent, but it just was like hit so home the way that you said that. And I just wanted to take a moment on it. I think it's amazing.
Yeah, yeah. And thank you for, Stephanie, bringing this information to the public and, getting it out there, because I'm just one person, and there's many others that, kind of know this, but we got to get the information out there. So,
Yes. Yes.
Anyway, so getting back to the accumulation of toxic stress in the body. So it can also be physical toxic stress. So if someone has injured their body, that's creating stress on the body. If there's, even like misalignments from structural misalignments. Like one of the people that I follow also is Dr. John Bergman. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Ooh, I'm not,
He's a
but I'll write him down.
chiropractor, and chiropractor in Southern California. He's quite passionate about his work. And I've learned he has a huge library of educational videos on the structure of the body, and how oftentimes impingements along the spinal column can create toxic stress in the body, and you see, different illnesses result from that, because the body's not functioning properly. So oftentimes I will refer like certain videos of Dr. Bergman's to my clients so that they can visualize what is going on in their body and hopefully get it corrected. As it also helps us with when we do visualizing exercises and stuff. So people don't know how their body works, and he, I love Bergman because, or people call him Dr. B, because he talks about the body being a whole system. It's not, in medicine, the doctors are so specialized in their one field. They just look for what's happening in, like gastroenterologists or cardiologists, or, and the body's a whole functioning organ. All the systems work together. And so, John Bergman educates people about that. So it gets away from, all the isolated systems. So I like that. So I refer his videos a lot. And so, okay, yeah, getting back to the toxic stress accumulation. So physical toxic stress, the chemical toxic stress, including pharmaceuticals that we're putting in our body, that's chemical. Okay. And then there's the mental and emotional toxic stress. And so that is the area and realm that I work in, right? Is the mental, emotional, and spiritual levels. And, it's not uncommon with women that I work with that have been diagnosed with some sort of a cancer, for there to have been some sort of big trauma in their history. Sexual trauma can come up a lot, sexual abuse. And that's interesting. I've been, trying to track a lot of the different factors for a lot of years, and what are the contributing factors with the people that come to see me, whether they're diagnosed with cancer. And so I'm looking at, my intake form is really thorough, and I look at all sorts of things, including, the family dynamics and the pharmaceuticals and vitamins that they take and injuries and all sorts of stuff. So let me see, I'm losing track of where.
That's okay. It's all good information. I mean, and honestly, and again, it's everyone's situation is so unique. Like for me, I didn't have this big major trauma. I luckily, thank God, I didn't have any sexual trauma in the past or anything like that. I think it was a culmination of two different things. It was the chronic stress, right? And then also and my sister told me for years to stop, but I'd wear sports bras and I'd put my phone right in my bra.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
was sitting in my internal medicine doctor's office, and she'd been my doctor for many years, and she knows me very well and how I research things, and I'm really adamant about learning stuff and everything. And she looked at me and she said, Steph, you've been practicing for this your whole life and preparing for it. You had no idea because of all the things you've been studying for fun. And she said, we had two different 15-year-olds when I was at a conference from different parts of the world present with aggressive breast cancer. And that just does not happen. And they were both had been putting their cell phones in their bras. I took my phone and I was like, and I did this, and I cannot even make this up, exactly where that phone would be in my bra to touching the skin was where my tumor was.
Oh my.
Again,
Wow.
I say that if I had not been in that chronic stress, I still think my body could have, held its own, if you will. But those are two culminations, right? So it's like you said, it's the things that we're eating, the places that we're going. It's, it could be some kind of physical trauma, some type of mental trauma. It could be even just the stress. There's a lot of different ways. And that's why it's important to have that coherence enough to where you're like, let me breathe today, right? Let me do something for myself today. And have that connection with those things. And, your degree is in, well, one of them, many I'm sure that you have, is in spiritual psychology. And like, I've never even heard of that. And like, there's so many amazing degrees people don't even know about. And so that's, what started you on your journey, along with, being at Bruce's presentation. But talk a little bit about the spiritual psychology, because that can probably help, those are probably tools there that help alleviate stress, which is a lot of the problem with a lot of these things. So tell us about that.
Yeah.
Never even heard of that.
Yeah, so I hadn't heard of it either. So, 22 years ago, when I was on a healing path, so I kind of reinvented myself in midlife after going through a divorce and trying to figure out, okay, what am I going to do? I need to, find a career. And I had become a massage therapist. Let me see, part of my healing process while going through divorce was receiving massage. And while I was at Esalen in Big Sur, I was receiving just loving touch, and all the, emotional stuff started coming out. And I had no idea that I had been holding on to so much hurt and pain. And, I was just trying to keep it all together, trying to keep my marriage together. And when that, fell apart, all of these emotions came out. So that opened my mind up to the idea that massage was more than something that, women did to pamper themselves. There was that emotional component. I had no idea. And so when I was looking to how I was going to reinvent myself, I was spending more time at Esalen receiving massage. And I thought, well, maybe this is like a career choice I could make. So I started off with, learning massage and different types of therapeutic touch and body work. And I'd already had a background in dance and yoga. So very body oriented, very physical, mountain biker, and so doing these other modalities taught me also how to tune into those subtle energies of the body, especially like cranial sacral work. And there was a Native American dear friend of mine who taught me the kind of Native American approach for energy work, calling in the medicine of the plants and the animals. So everyone knows about Reiki. I had a different teacher. And so when I was looking to take that next step in my education and expand my tools and career path, I thought about acupuncture and homeopathy. And then I went to a friend of mine who was a doctor of Oriental medicine and asking for his career guidance, and he was officing in the same place as this University of Santa Monica. And right in the window, it said master's degree in spiritual psychology. And I thought, wow, what is that? I'd in my earlier education, I thought I was going to be like a dance therapist. So I was interested in psychology, and the spiritual part was like, oh, that's the missing piece of the puzzle. So, I have all the body stuff down, the subtle energy down, and now the spiritual psychology. Yeah, there's something in that because the traditional approaches to psychology really falls short in my view. So, to back up and give a little personal story on me, I was married for 16 years, and my before we got married, my husband had been in therapy for like 12 years, and during our marriage, we sought the help of a marriage and family therapist who could give us ground rules and guidelines for fighting fairly, but could teach us
Okay.
nothing about how to stay in our loving when we each
Okay.
got triggered, right? So
Hmm.
and and so and what I guess during that time I was trying to keep the marriage together, I was looking for like a higher purpose, higher meaning in the challenges that we were going through. So the first book that I read was Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh. And he was asking the tough questions, right? So I was trying to, find a higher road for myself, and it was spiritually based. And so when I saw this master's course, it all seemed to just fit the puzzle that I was trying to put together for myself. And yeah, so without even understanding what it was, I signed up and then learned.
The rest is history.
And then all the other stuff came, and meeting Bruce Lipton, and all these other factors. And yeah, so that's how, and in the beginning, 20 years ago, I said that, anything that was spiritual was looked upon, and my perspective too, kind of woo-woo, even though I believed in it and I knew it was the missing link. I was afraid to own it and to acknowledge that, that I was a spiritual therapist. So I used to say, oh, I do holistic stress reduction. That's how I labeled my work. And when I would work with people, I kind of slipped in that spiritual perspective.
Hmm. Yeah.
So now I can own it.
That's good. And the funny thing about, how so many people do like go, you say this is woo woo and that's woo woo. But if you actually take the time to study most of the woo woo, it's based in science, whether it be physics or neuroscience. I mean, there's a whole list that it falls within, but I mean, almost all of it's scientifically based for thousands of years, not even like the last five, I
Yeah,
think people
yeah.
are kind
So
of missing
who
that
helped?
part.
I think that the person who really helped legitimize it for me was Joe Dispenza. So he
Yes.
had been on my radar for a lot of years, and then I think it was only 4 years ago or 5 years ago or something, and he started coming out publicly with the research because he had been hooking people up to heart brain coherence monitors, and so he was building up his research through a scientific method. And
Yeah.
so when he started becoming more vocal, it was like, yes, another person like
Exactly.
Bruce Lipton that's going to finally
Yes.
legitimize the energy part of it
Yes.
and the spiritual part of it.
Yes. And I don't know if you
Mm.
follow Greg Braden as well, but he's another one of the front runners, I would say,
Yeah,
that's really like kind of bringing all this out and talking about all these amazing things that are people are being introduced to.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Very
Those are,
cool.
they call those guys the three horsemen, right?
Okay.
Dispenza, Dispenza, and Lipton and Greg Braden. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
quite a trio.
Yeah. Yeah. They really are there. I mean, like I said, I've been following them all for years, and I just love the work that they're doing. I mean, I've probably read the Biology of Belief at least twice because it's like, did I miss anything? I'm sure I could read it again and I'll still find, a lot more things. And thank goodness for Gaia TV because they just put out so much incredible work. And so they're really good as well. And speaking of that, I was watching something the other day, and it was talking about somatic something, and it made me look up somatic science. And then you have a
Mm.
back in somatic dialogue. So what is that? I didn't even get a chance to read
Yeah.
when I was doing my Google search. I got distracted, but I'd love more information on that.
Yeah. So Peter Levine was the guy that I think was first on the scene that talked about somatic experience.
Okay.
And so I, taken that concept and applied my own approach to it. And because my work has always been very body oriented, right? So I have that background in therapeutic touch and different modalities and the subtle energy work. So taking the idea of somatic having to do with the body and dialogue and dialoguing with those parts of the body that are holding on to tightness, tension, and stress. And so the technique that I use, that I call somatic dialogue, is similar to hypnosis, but a little bit different. Just
Okay.
allows us to get out of this rational thinking mind, the intellectual mind, down into deeper levels of the heart, the soul, and the subconscious. And then while we're working at those deeper levels, we're actually dialoguing with those parts of the body that are holding on to tightness and tension and stress. And 98% of the time, when I'm working at those deeper levels, what comes forward is information from early childhood. So when that information comes forward, then we move into inner child healing work, looking at that inner saboteur voice that may be there. Sacred anger work may come into
Yes.
play,
Yes.
and forgiveness, of course. So
That's huge, the forgiveness part. God, that sure is hard, isn't it?
yeah,
It
and it's
sure
not
is
so
hard.
much the, forgiveness of others that we feel have wronged us somehow,
Okay.
but it's the self-judgment, and the self-judgment and blame that we hold inside our bodies. It's the most damaging. Again, it's how you're holding those thoughts and emotions inside your own body that triggers that chemical release in the body, right?
Yeah.
And either that triggering that protection mode, the freeze, fight, or flight mode, or the growth mode. And as Bruce Lipton shows and illustrates in Biology of Belief, the human cell can be in one mode or the other, but it can't be in both of those modes at the same time.
Yeah. And, the fact that a lot of things that you mentioned, that you have mentioned here is like things that I used to approach the diagnosis that I had. As I mentioned, I did chemo and radiation. I also did Reiki energy work. I also did, you mentioned massage. I did that as well. You mentioned acupuncture. I did that as well.
Mm-hmm.
The visualization, like when I would have to have the chemo, which like I was just like, couldn't even believe, right? And I wouldn't allow any of the medical staff to use any of the negative words for these drugs. They weren't allowed to use that in my space. And even when it came to the chemo, I envisioned it as liquid gold running through my body and just picking up
Mm.
the things that it needed to pick up. And then I had the doctor give me 1,000 cc's of saline after every single drip to immediately
Mm.
start cleaning
Wow.
everything I could. And then I had a post juicing that I did, and then a pre-juicing that I did, and then a post-juicing that I did,
Mm-hmm.
along with supplements and infrared therapy.
Beautiful.
I'm leaving multiple things off. The
Yeah.
work that we did together, um,
Yeah.
and just kind of all those different things that I had heard about or been interested in for a long time,
Yeah.
to try to just do everything I could and try everything I could to complement one versus the other, and work on the mind and the body and the soul, and all those
Mm.
different things. And
Yeah.
it did go really well. It did go really
That
well.
is beautiful. That's exactly what, you need to be doing and one needs to do. When you get a cancer diagnosis, healing yourself becomes a full-time job, right? And it
It
has to
does.
be an integrated approach. So when people talk about other types of therapies, they might use the word, alternative therapy.
I
And
know.
I'm
I
like,
quit
no,
doing that. I
nothing is
quit doing that.
alternative,
Yeah.
right?
I
It's
quit doing that.
complementary, right? It's a
Hmm.
holistic and integrated approach. I
Yes.
will say that, 30% of my clients that I work with from around the world are diagnosed with some sort of advanced stage cancer. right?
Mm-hmm.
And so and then 60 to 65% have some sort of autoimmune disorder that they're struggling with, right? And then maybe, the smallest percentage of my clients are going through some sort of big life upset, the death of a loved one or loss of job or, big career change, something that's been a big upset in their lives. So with autoimmune disorders, with the cancer diagnosis, and it's has to be an integrated approach. And everyone that does have a cancer diagnosis, they will choose to do both the chemo and the radiation, depending upon what their diagnosis is, and doing all the other things as well, working with me, working with, changing, maybe they have to do some diet changes. So working with a nutritionist and integrative doctor that can show them other, modalities. There's a great, I have a YouTube channel, and it's under my full name, Dianne Porchia. And I have different playlists, and there's a playlist on healing cancer. And there's a great 5-part series that's free for everyone to listen to. And it was the recorded session with me and one of my clients. I think it was maybe 3 years ago. It was when the pandemic just came out, I think. So, and she contracted COVID during her second round of chemo at the hospital, and she felt really strongly that what helped her get through both the COVID and the full, chemo series of treatments was this 3-phase protocol that she was following, because she was working with an integrative doctor at the same time. She was working with her oncologist. And so she allowed me to record the session and share it. So I've got a 5-part series on my YouTube channel, Dianne Porchia, playlist Healing Cancer, and it's called COVID and Cancer. And each one is maybe 6 or 7 minutes long. And you'll hear my client talking about the 3-phase protocol. And basically, the first phase is about targeting the medicine. So it's circulation. So circulating the targeted medicine in your body, the chemo, right? So you visualized it as liquid gold, which is beautiful. It's able to, pick up all the particles and carry it away. I love that. Some people use a little Pac-Man that's eating them, or light that is dissolving and dissolving the cells and stuff. There's lots of different visualizations. So circulating the targeted treatment. Then the second phase, I forget how many days after treatment, is the detox phase. So detoxifying the body after the treatment. And you asked your doctor for a saline infusion afterward, which is really interesting. I hadn't heard that before. It makes perfect sense.
Well, my question
and
was,
he was willing to do it directly afterward, or what?
Yeah. So my question was, so I explained that I had to have, multiple female surgeries before, and that each surgery, I knew that the anesthesia would really jack me up. I mean, for 2 weeks, it would just like everything from emotional to just like it would jack me up. So I figured out, I came up with like a pre-surgery protocol and a post-surgery protocol. And so my understanding was that anesthesia, it's there. And then when it's done, it's done. So like, get it out. Right. Mm-hmm. And so that's how my mind was treating that. And so when I was meeting with the oncologist, I met with 3 to find the perfect one for me. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I asked her, I said, Dr. Larned, I recommend her to everybody. I said, Dr. Larned, I have a question. And I explained what I did for anesthesia. I said, so with the chemo, is it like you're putting it in and then I need to like hang out with it for a week? Or like, is it like it kind of like anesthesia, it runs through and you drip it and then like, it's okay to kind of get it out. And I was like, and she's like, well, that's an interesting question. No one's ever asked me before. She goes, you can actually like get it out. And I said, well, isn't a lot of the side effects and stuff having to do with like dehydration? And then if you feel like crap, how are you going to drink enough? And it's already hard to drink enough, much less really, really, really drink enough. And she goes, well, yeah. And I said, well, then why can't I just drip 1,000 cc's of saline? Like as soon as I'm done, I'm there anyway. The day's shot anyway. I want to feel better. I want to focus on healing. So why can't we just do that? And she's like, well, we can. I'm like, all right, let's do it. And I've actually shared that with multiple other survivors going through treatments. And they've just been like, I cannot believe the difference of how I feel. And
That is
it's
so
awesome.
brilliant. That is brilliant,
Awesome.
Stephanie. And the fact
Thank
that
you.
you came up with that yourself. So you were really listening to your body,
Mhm.
and using
Yeah.
logic and common sense rather than, just letting yourself be the guinea pig.
Right.
And, so it was high involvement in the process of healing, right?
Yes.
Which
Very
is
high
really good,
and
really important. And that,
important
mindset is
advocacy.
also really, really important
Huge.
because it's empowering. When you
It is.
can do proactive things to help yourself, right? So you
Yeah.
came to this awareness that, yeah, I need to get this out of my body. And why not saline? That's fabulous. Fabulous.
Yeah.
And then the third phase is immune boosting. So after the circulation, after the detoxification, then you want to build up the immune system again in preparation for that next round of chemo, because it's not just one round. You have to go through a whole
Right.
series, and it's very hard on the body. So COVID and cancer, the three-phase protocol is on my YouTube station. And I tell all my cancer clients about that so that they can be working with an integrative, doctor at the same time. This was Michael Brofman in San Anselmo, and all of his consultations are done remotely, so you don't have to be there. One of my other clients actually sent me the report that he gave her after her consultation, and it was the first time I actually got to see a report, and it's so thorough. It must have been like 7 or 8 pages, and excellent, excellent. And yeah, so he's really good. He's mentioned in the video too, so your listeners can look him up. Yeah, so that's you were doing the right stuff. You knew intuitively, and of course you were very proactive. It's very
Yeah,
good.
I think that we really need to be advocates for
Yes.
ourselves and the first two people, one was she was fine. She, wasn't like no, 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 and I rule all, but it just didn't feel like I'm gonna be involved and you're gonna deal with me a lot, and but one of the
Mm-hmm.
guys, still makes me cringe because he just like, well, nope,
Mm.
nope, nope. I'm like, well, how have you researched the stuff or like I was just like my poor husband was like, oh God, I gotta leave. She's about to make a scene, like,
Yeah.
but I love
Yeah.
Dr. Larney because our agreement was positive, negative, or neutral. And
Mm-hmm.
like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, so I think that would help you. Okay, that's fine. Okay, well, now, well, I think give me a few days. I'm going to research that. And okay, I think that's neutral. So whatever you want, or, I don't think you should do this. And there was
Mm-hmm.
toward the end, there was like, she was like, okay, you're all right. You're doing enough. Like we need to stop now. But
Mm-hmm.
I really appreciated that. And most things I did listen to her. The one thing I didn't was I also did colonics. And because again, like you're saying, circulation, cleaning it out. Well, that was also my idea because it was like, well, if you're doing all this and you might, have diarrhea, but you also might get constipated, right? And so I need like all of it to come out. And so I did colonics every single week. And she said,
Wow.
I don't think you should do that because of the dangers of infection. But I had been
Mm.
working with this practitioner for 10 years already. I mean, I knew her space.
Mm.
I knew that she was going to be very protective and clean and all that. But I was like, I can't not though, because you told me I can get it out and I want all of it out before I go do
Mm.
more next week. Like, and so even that
Mm.
was another thing that I did. So it's awesome. I knew that I loved you, but it's awesome because like I pretty much was doing your steps, but I didn't even know it.
Mm.
Right. And I didn't
Yeah.
even know those were your
Sounds like
steps,
it.
but I kind of had a very
Yep.
similar approach. So I love, love, love that you're
Mm-hmm.
working with people and getting really great results on that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so important.
Yeah,
So
I love the
important.
work that you're
And
doing.
and mentally and emotionally, it's so empowering, right? So then you're not just the victim of, the oncologists that have such a narrow focus, right?
They
So
can,
that,
some can.
comes back to the specialization of doctors and how, they know nothing about nutrition. They know nothing about
They're not
detoxifying the
taught.
body.
They're
They
not taught
they
that.
know this is
Yeah.
what they want to do to
Yeah.
treat, a condition, and that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
So,
it's
yeah.
true. And I think we need, all the different pieces and parts, and we need communication and we need openness. For a doctor to tell you no when they don't know the answer. I mean, sometimes they do, that's fine, right? But like,
Hmm.
don't tell me no on infrared therapy when there's like all these studies as of how many ways it can complement,
Yeah.
um, and being an advocate for yourself and saying, okay, well, I'm not going to accept that answer, and
Hmm.
having been in those shoes and knowing that like you got to make a decision, you got to go. This is an emergency. Like you are like,
Hmm.
this is very not good. And but saying and having the space for myself and saying, okay, I'm not going to lollygag, right? I'm not going to take months, but I'm not going to just pick someone because I have to hurry. Like I'm going to find the person that is right for me, to work with me and to communicate with
Hmm.
me and let me be an advocate for myself and let me understand, things that are going on. And, even with the mind part, like for every single treatment, I dressed up like a something. I had huge wigs, princess wigs, and I was a unicorn and I was a cheerleader. But not only did it help me feel good to see the smiles on people's faces in that
Yeah.
drab place that
Yeah.
we had to
Yeah.
go. And my place was actually beautiful, all things considered. But to see their smiles and then know that some of those mornings I was like, I'm not doing it. I'm not
Yeah.
going. I'm not participating anymore. And then I would just say, just get dressed. I would get dressed and
Mm.
I'd be dressed and I'd look at myself and I look so ridiculous in children's clothing most of the time. So why do the kids get all the fun clothes, by the way? It's a lot of the dresses didn't zip in the back because, you end up I gained 30 pounds during chemo. And so a lot of the dresses were kids' dresses that wouldn't even zip in the back. So in the front, I'm walking through the halls. The back's not zipped. I don't give a shit. You know what I mean? And like, but that would be dressed and I would be so silly that I'd be like, it's part of the process. Like, let's go,
That's so beautiful that you allowed yourself to have fun even when you didn't feel like having fun. You know,
yes. Yes. I
that's
felt
a
like the
real
mindset.
commitment to yourself and a real commitment to self-loving, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
That's
I really felt like
beautiful.
it was part of the process, and I think that
Yeah.
it's so awesome, all the things that you're doing and all the people that you're
Mhm.
helping with all the things that you're doing and sharing. And I love that. I appreciate you. I appreciate your work. And I love that you have so many like you said, like a lot of people are like super specialized, right? And you are specialized in what you do, but you also like have all these things in your tool belt. You're not having this
Yeah.
like tunnel vision of it's just this. You're like, well, this, complements, and then you study and you learn. And
Hmm.
I just think it's awesome that I'm so appreciative of the work that you're doing. It's the question I'm going to ask that, might not be easy to answer, but what's the favorite part of your work? Like, I mean, it feels like it'd
Oh,
be just so beautiful and rewarding. Like, what's
it
your
is.
favorite,
My favorite part of the work is seeing all the miracles. I mean, like you, really. I mean, that is so great. I mean, people will come to me in the first session and they're down. Of course they're down and they're just everything is just fear-based and trauma and drama and by the end of the first session they have hope. And
Yes.
and as we progress, I see the light in them again, you know, and yeah, it's beautiful that I get to witness the healing. And that's not to say that everyone, doesn't die. Some people do die, And I'm, you know, blessed that the majority of people that I work with don't die.
Thank you.
And I get to see all these beautiful miracles. And part of the healing also is making peace with the possibility of dying. You know, that's like the greatest fear that people have is you know, what if I die? You know?
Yeah.
And so that's part of the spiritual perspective. We go, you know, we explore the higher purpose and, you know, and coming to terms with your human experience being having an exit ticket. We don't know when the exit ticket is, you know?
Right. Let me hold on. You left. Yes. No, I'm sorry. I don't even know what
And
happened,
no
but
one has control over the exit ticket.
right. Right. But
So
the
we
best you can
arrive
do
on
is,
time. Yeah,
yes.
we arrive from the spiritual perspective. We arrive on time. We are meant to be here now. And we leave on time. And none of us knows when, you know, that exit ticket is going to be or what the method is going to be. It could be from a long illness. It could be from sudden death. You get hit by a car. Someone else could take your life, or you could die of old age. We don't know. And all of that is out of our control. So surrendering this need to control is part of the healing. A lot of people that are diagnosed with cancer have been so controlled their whole life and trying to control everything in their life. And that need to control has created so much stress in their lives, you know, and upset. And so surrendering control, turning it over to a higher power, trusting that there is in that you're a soul, that you're a spiritual being having your own unique human experience on earth, and that you have a higher purpose here, and part of your opportunity is to find out what your unique talents and gifts are and to really fully step into that. And you found yours as a, you know, a podcaster and bringing information out to others, which is beautiful. You know, it's one of your many talents. So thank you for what you're doing.
Of course. Thank you. And I just, if I do nothing else but just instill a piece of hope in someone, then that's all. I mean, that anything else is a bonus, you know?
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. And before we wrap up, I'd love to hear, I mean, you have a good big project you're working on. Like, tell us a little bit
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, I do. It's really amazing that I am in the middle of creating Porchia's holistic eco farm sanctuary in Oregon. Our family
Wow.
has property up there, and my brother and sister-in-law had bought it 20 years ago. It was never farmed, and he died in January 2020, and the property fell into a great disrepair and neglect over the years. And so I have the opportunity to do something with it. And my vision, it's a beautiful property. It's 46 acres. It's in, not outside of Eugene, Oregon. And it has 5 beautiful ecosystems on the property. So there's flat pasture land for farming. There's a beautiful oak savanna with these large heritage oaks, about 2 acres of that, gorgeous. Then there's about 6 acres of riparian and woodland area, habitat for animals and birds and all sorts of stuff. And then in the way back, there's, I don't know, 15 acres, something like that, of wetlands with beavers. So my vision is to create this eco farm sanctuary as a place for the practice, study, and education of regenerative farming using rotating plants and animals that naturally fertilize the soil and build up the microbiome of the soil. So there's no pesticides, and done naturally, no tilling. And then also eco conservation of these beautiful ecosystems that we have on the property. And the byproduct of all of that is really human health and wellness through living, close to nature and in right relationship with Mother Earth. So I see the Eco Farm Sanctuary as an extension of human health and wellness,
Yeah.
by connecting with the nature, working in right relationship with the nature. And it's even so much more critical now with the fast advancing technologies of AI, robotics, holograms that are, creating augmented and mixed realities. I mean, it's just crazy. And then, of course, foods that are being grown in laboratories,
Yeah.
right? So this is my small contribution, on 46 acres to preserve humanity. Really, I'm joining a movement of other people that are concerned about where the food comes from and how animals are raised and treated, and all of that gets passed into the humans that consume it and our beautiful ecosystems that need to be preserved. So that's what I'm working on.
My gosh, sounds so beautiful. And what a gift to have all that on one piece of land. Like that is so
Yeah.
phenomenal. I mean,
It's a very special property. It's a very special
yeah.
property. So right now I'm in the process of um, looking for the right regenerative tenant farmer or farmers to live on the property and work the land. I'm not a farmer, but I'm learning a lot about regenerative farming. I'm
Yeah.
not going to actually be doing the work, but I have the land, as a landowner, and there are young farmers out there that are starting out, that are inspired about regenerative farming, about, healthy foods that are grown outdoors under the sun and in open spaces. And so I have a place for them to study and learn and practice this and, be part of the community, the larger community of regenerative farmers.
Wow, that's so beautiful. Gosh, just adding to your toolbox of doing so much amazing stuff for this world. Thank you. That's
Yeah,
so
it's
awesome.
exciting. It's really fun.
That's so
And
awesome.
I've
Well,
got
I
a
appreciate it.
playlist again on my YouTube channel. If anyone's interested, there's a playlist called Oregon, and you
Oh,
can see I've been documenting the process of, I think it was 3 years ago that I moved all my stuff up there. So I'm living in two places in Southern California and Topanga Canyon, and then also up in Oregon, and putting stuff together so you can be following the progress of it.
that is really cool. That's awesome.
Yeah,
I
that
love
and
doing
also
that too.
Instagram. Yeah, I posted on Instagram as well, but the videos are mainly on my YouTube channel.
Too. Well, what are your handles? Like, so give us your Instagram handle. Go ahead and
Yeah,
tell us the channel again. You did once, but just in case people can write it down now.
yeah.
Um,
So my website is Porchia's Wish. That's P as in Paul, ORCHIA, and then S as in Sam, and then Wish. And Wish is an acronym. It's actually stands for Whole Integrated self-health, right? So whole person integrated, because we're an integrated system, self and health. And the tagline is path to healing, loving, and living consciously. So all of my work is that, whether it's
awesome.
the, work I do individually with people or the work I'm doing up in Oregon, you know. So Porchia's Wish is my website. On Instagram, follow me with my full name, Dianne Porchia. So it's DIANNE underscore or hyphen Porchia, my last name, PORCHIA. YouTube is my full name again, Dianne Porchia. And I have a lot of different playlists on there. There's one on healing cancer, one on relationships, one on workshops and retreat offerings that I have, one on Oregon. You can see the latest project. And I don't know what else. And then I also have Facebook that is, I think it's Dianne Porchia or Porchia's Wish, might have both. I think
Okay.
Dianne Porchia has the most people on it. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Well, that's awesome. And people can actually work directly with you as I was able to find you and do some work with you
Mhm.
as well. So hopefully they'll reach out and be able work directly with you. And even if not, it's like you have so much knowledge and information that you share, and it's so awesome. So I appreciate you so much for taking the time. You have so many things going on, and I know that time is very valuable, and we had to reschedule for a couple things. So I apologize for that. And I'm so thankful for you to make the time and for joining me today.
You're welcome. Thank you, Stephanie. And then I also have a newsletter, a Portia's Wish Wellness newsletter. So if people want to receive that, because I give valuable information on that, and also share lots of inspiring stories with clients. And so to sign up for that, go to my website, portiaswish.com, and then you can subscribe to the newsletter and receive that. So if
nothing else, do that, because I love these newsletters so much. So please, if nothing else, sign up for that newsletter. Thank you for that as well.
Okay.
Well, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. It's great to see you as well. And thank you so much for your time today.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
You've been listening to The Dharma Project with Stephanie Weeks, helping you find your Dharma, your truth.